It's time now for County-Wide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Brad Miller as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives here in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's County-Wide.
Good day, everybody, and welcome to the program. It's County-Wide. Brad Miller with you, and we're happy to welcome into studio today Eric Kriwer. Eric is Fire Marshal with the Prescott Fire Department. He's been a busy man over the last couple of weeks, as have everybody in the Prescott Fire Department, the city folks, and certainly the community itself. And we're talking, of course, about the Whiskey Row fire. Just a couple of weeks ago, 3 businesses lost in the heart of Prescott off the courthouse square. And we welcome you to studio today.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you for having me today.
I expected you to still be dirty and you know, and all that, because I know you guys have had quite a thing. And I don't mean to make light at all.
Sure.
I guess the one good thing is there were no injuries to fire or civilians in this.
Correct. Yeah, we had
devastating fire.
We had 9 engine companies and 3 truck companies, and well over 70 personnel on site, and not one injury during this fire. So that was a really good thing. In
a fire of this nature, what we're going to talk about today, we're going to have Eric kind of briefly recap the Whiskey Row fire. I think most of the details at this point are out, but then we're going to talk. We've been getting calls here. People on the street will, you know, that I, excuse me, bump into, and even some phone calls into our newsroom that. Because we kind of shorthand call them the 100-year-old buildings, and I know they all pretty much are. But I wanted to talk about further, you know, potential for devastation like this along Whiskey Row and in some of those historic buildings in Prescott, because that's going to apply to Jerome, Clarkdale. My house is built in 1926.
Wow.
We enjoy it. You know, it's awesome to have all of that history, but it poses different kinds of challenges, and you can help us kind of understand that. But let's start with a brief recap.
Sure.
We lost 3 businesses. What happened?
That's correct. On Tuesday, May 8th, we had a call out for a structure fire downtown. So for Prescott Fire Department, that's one of those things. When we get called out for a downtown structure fire, that's always been on our radar. History will tell you when we have a fire downtown and we're a working fire, a structure fire that's involved, that it's a serious business. So we could tell right away when the first engine company got on the scene and had heavy fire from the roof area. Yeah. Looked like an AC vent or maybe a hood vent from the roof. And first crews got on the scene and quickly went interior and tried to get access and found that they had a working attic fire. So it really accelerated really quickly.
An attic fire is real trouble, isn't it?
Correct, yes, especially when you have crews on the roof. So we had crews on the roof attempting to do what we'd call a trench cut. That trench cut would be a long cut horizontally across the top of the roof, and if we could get that trench cut accomplished, often it will cut the path of fire. Well, fire conditions were so bad on the roof area that we quickly had to get crews off the roof.
Yeah, just for their safety.
Correct.
Yeah. Now this fire we understood started in the restaurant Pearl's Place.
Yeah.
And what we've heard is a small appliance. Like, can you shed light on that? A blender or a microwave or what? What are we talking about? Or can we get into that yet?
We can get into some of it. Yeah. What we did is Prescott Fire Department quickly realized that the fire investigation would be a really detailed fire investigation. So we called up some helps and some assistance. Central Yavapai provided some assistance to us, and we also called up a Maricopa County Fire Investigation Task Force. And we're starting a task force like that in Yavapai County. But crews went in, and we were quickly able to gain access within the kitchen area. Had to move a lot of debris from all the collapse of the roof, get into that kitchen area, and what we found is an area of origin that is by a few appliances, and there's a trash can in that area. So we were able to narrow it down to that part, but mechanical engineering by the insurance companies and some other detailed investigations that's beyond our scope will get a detailed source once they decide if they want to go that far in the insurance side of the house.
Okay, so you could say here's where it started. Exactly what happened, we don't know why, and that's, to me, that would seem to be pretty common in a lot of fires.
Yeah, you
find out where, and the exact specifics of what happened can be tricky.
It can be. It's very difficult. Fire investigations are a very difficult trade, and it takes a lot to really narrow something down, especially because fire can be so devastating.
Yeah, everybody being that group of nondescript everybody's that are talking about this, but we heard a lot that this fire spread very quickly by fire standards. Did it? Was this typical? From one business to the next?
What we found is the area of origin actually had a hood system, a kitchen hood system over it. Well, Pearl's place did not require to have an ANSEL system, a fire protection system over the kitchen area. They had taken out the fryers and those types of things that call for those ANSEL fire protection system. So they still had the air exchange with that hood system going on to ventilate any smoke or anything like that. And what happened is this fire quickly gained access to the attic area through the hood system and expanded laterally between those three businesses.
Okay.
So that was why you saw so much fire in that attic area so quickly. And then you'd be amazed at the unburned area on the lower parts, especially in the bird cage and the food store, how much was unburned. Some smoke and heat damage, but most of the damage was from the pancaking once the roof collapsed.
Everything fell in.
Correct.
It got so hot, burned, and collapsed.
Yeah.
Now, these three businesses burned. The two on either side of those on the end did not. Why?
Correct. What you'll see is something very unique to the older style of construction. Sometimes we'll call them firewalls, but a true firewall is a 4-hour rated masonry block wall without any penetration, so no gas lines or piping or anything penetrating those walls. So these weren't true firewalls, but they were masonry block walls. The old lath and plaster construction that we had in those buildings and those block walls held really well. One of the differences, and I don't know if you want to get into the fire suppression tactics that we use today versus the early 1900s, but the fire suppression tactics were able to get a lot of water to cool the fire quickly before it could extend into any of the other businesses, which is the hotel to the south and Moctezuma's to the north.
Okay, exactly, and that's kind of the thing. Let's do this. Let's go ahead and take our first break here. I want to kind of cover the fire, and then come back, and I want to do that, to kind of compare to the fire of 100 or so years ago.
Yeah.
That was much more devastating, and those differences, and suppression, as you just suggested, was a big part of that. We'll take a short break. Our guest is Eric Kriwer, Prescott Fire Marshal, talking about the Whiskey Row fire. Back after this.
Here in northern Arizona and throughout Yavapai County, people count on Orkin Pest Control. With over 100 years of combined experience, nobody knows how to protect your home or your business from harmful or annoying pests like the Orkin Man. To start service, contact your northern Arizona Orkin Pest Control. In the Verde Valley, call 567-5100 or Orkin Pest Control in the Prescott area at 775-8772.
Hi, I'm Steve Scourgy with Yavapai Silent Witness. Marshal Gonzalez was murdered on this spot almost 15 years ago, back in March of 1997. We know that there is somebody out there who knows what happened in the alley that night. Yavapai Silent Witness is offering an $11,000 cash reward for information that leads to the arrest of Marshal's killer. For Yavapai Silent Witness, I'm Steve Scourgy.
The pain will not control us. It will never break us, define us, or keep us still. Because arthritis can't beat us if we beat it first. In the fight against arthritis, you need a weapon. What's yours? Visit the Arthritis Foundation at fightarthritispain.org.
Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. Go to discovertheforest.org.
You've been doing this a long time. Welcome back to the program. Again, our guest today is Eric Kriwer, Fire Marshal with Prescott Fire. Been a very busy man since May 8th with the Whiskey Row fire. Let me ask you before we go on, dollar damages. I've heard a lot of different numbers thrown about. Do we have that whittled down yet?
It's so hard to estimate fire damage, especially in Whiskey Row, an area with such historic history and value. But right now we're at about $1 million in the actual building loss and probably about $1 million in contents.
Okay.
The toughest part is to figure out the potential. What's the potential fire loss if the entire Whiskey Row were to go down? And then also, what is the economic impact People lost jobs, tax revenue towards the city. So there's a huge impact financially to the entire city and the region, really.
I actually got a chill when you were saying that, thinking about that. And speaking about that, it did happen quite some time ago.
Yeah.
To me, it seems like there'll be some obvious answers to what was the difference between, I guess, the Great Whiskey Row Fire of 1900, 1901.
I'm not quite sure. I think it was 1900, yeah.
Okay, but the difference between that and today, certainly fire suppression, techniques and knowledge, but was there anything else about it that were, the two that were different?
Well, really, there was something that worked in our favor. One is all three of those buildings were basically one building. All three of those businesses were one building. They were divided by those block walls that I spoke of. The windows on the hotel could have been very dangerous with direct flame impact. But getting back to suppression versus 1900 and today, back in 1900, between the hose carts, the hose water systems, the ability to only get a little bit of water, where today we have the ability to get a lot of water fast. So a lot of people have discussions about our big truck companies and do we need those big truck companies and that kind of thing. Well, those three truck companies really combined with the firefighting efforts on the ground made the difference in this fire. Yeah. In 1900, if you had to have bucket brigades and you were slowly putting water on that, you would have never been able to get that fire cool enough like we were able to with those truck companies. We had 5,000 gallons a minute flowing on that fire for 3 hours of time.
Wow.
Yeah, and the city water system was able to support that. 100 years ago, they actually made an event out of it. Once they got the bars out, the wood bars and all their stuff, they actually made an event. It became somewhat of a party back in those long days. That they would hang out and they would play music and they would continue to try to maintain a block, not just between certain areas of the fire. So we were able to do that. And our equipment and our efforts and our training and education is really what's the difference now.
You were able to fight this fire, whereas back then it was salvage. It's coming.
Yeah.
It's at that end of the block and it's coming. Let's save what we can. And it's just how it is. And it seems obvious, but to kind of move forward even from that perspective, a lot of these firefighting techniques and all of those kinds of things have improved dramatically, of course, over that 100 years. But a lot of those buildings perhaps haven't, in that they are 100 or close to years old. What is when you as fire marshal, and the fire inspectors go out, certainly a new house, a newly built house is going to be a lot different for you to inspect than a building that's 100 years old, especially if it's a commercial building, all the traffic that's been through it, the wiring done who knows when. How do you get a handle on that? The area around the courthouse, the historic area in Prescott, I've had people say fire trap. They said, it's going to happen again. The 1900 fire, just bound to happen again. Do you think that's true?
Well, I think we'll have more fires downtown, to be honest with you. We have 4,000 businesses in the city of Prescott and only so many inspectors. And one of the things that's difficult is what happens is there's a lot of modifications that happen and it's not permitted work.
Yeah.
When somebody has a change of use, so if we have a building go from a bookshop to a restaurant, then we get in there and we get a lot of detail because the building's brought up to code.
Right.
And we can get, we have a lot of successes. McIlvain Motors has a full sprinkler system and alarm system. The Knights of Pythias, same thing, beautiful remodel, sprinkler system, and we're still able to maintain that look of the original downtown flavor that we want to keep. So when we get down there, the only people that can go in existing buildings are fire inspectors. The building department can't go in and do spot inspections on buildings. They can if they're invited in, or if we see something on that is related to some kind of a building code violation.
Right.
But per our city code, the fire department is the only people that are allowed in after final C of O. So if they don't do any changes, it's our job to try to get into every business within every 2 years once, but it's very difficult. The change of use, we get a great opportunity. So when it changes from some kind of occupancy like a business to a restaurant or a mercantile, some change, we can get in there. But there's some of the antique shops and stuff, overuse of extension cords. We really try to hammer this into folks, these fire code violations, and let them know that we're doing that for not only their safety, but all their customer safety and our firefighter safety and our citizens in general.
Right. I guess it becomes any antique store is going to have extension cords lighting up all those beautiful lamps, no matter where. But it just does seem, and I think you understand, it seems to add, a certain kind of, I won't say fear, but concern certainly.
Yeah.
when you have all those extension cords running in a 100-year-old wood frame building.
You bet.
And so you kind of get that. You mentioned the firewalls, not proper firewalls, but they were effective that way in this fire.
Yes.
Are those common along Whiskey Row?
Yeah, what you'll see is as a building is built, you'll get suites or like a strip plaza, or a few will be built within a building. The actual fire building that we were on that just had suffered the fire damage was built in 1948.
Okay.
But the hotel next to it was built in 1900.
Okay.
And then some of the others that go farther down the road were built at different times. So what happens is things happen, they maybe have a fire, or they change and they get torn down, and then they get rebuilt. But obviously the historic values we try to maintain downtown and keep everything as original as we possibly can.
Right.
But it's if you have a neighboring business, you're hoping that your neighboring business is doing everything they can to be safe as you are. So when we go into business, it's only fair to people to maintain the safety all around, as protect your neighbors, so to speak.
Right.
So we think that's really important.
It's just 2 weeks, and there's a lot that's going to kind of come, from this. But was there anything that you've kind of discovered through this fire, through investigating afterwards and everything at this point, that you think, holy cow, we didn't see that coming? That's something that we need to change, and we need to encourage the building owners and or tenants or whomever downtown to really look at these. Was there any, I don't want to say smoking gun here either, but anything that you thought, wow, this is something that really was critical to this fire and is going to be a problem in the future?
Well, you bet. A smoker produces grease-laden vapors, and if somebody's using a smoker, they should have a fire protection system. But per the fire code, I can't always call that out. But the building official was down there with myself, and we really had an opportunity to talk. And we've talked with some of our political leaders within the city. And we're going to form a task force and try to get into those businesses downtown, because what we found when we walked some of the businesses that were affected by a little bit of smoke and some of the water that got into the basement areas, we were able to look through the grid ceiling and see some other modifications that were made downtown. And so we're going to go through and try to hit all the downtown businesses. We hit all the saloons and everything every year at the 4th of July.
Right.
But we're looking for more of the common things like extension cords, block exiting, making sure their sprinklers and hood systems are up to date if they have them. But we're going to go downtown and kind of do a task force. We don't want it to be a scary thing, we want it to be an educational thing.
Right.
But we're going to go in and try to hit every business downtown. It's going to take some time, but go in and try to help them make sure that everything's as safe as it can be.
Didn't we have an issue a couple Christmases ago with the lighting, the holiday lighting on some of the old buildings, and there was fire, potential fire concern over that?
Yeah, holiday lighting, I think we've done a show on holiday lighting before. The holiday lighting is really scary because people will use aged Christmas lights and lighting. And then also if it's not on a properly fused GFI type outlets and those kinds of things.
Well, but I mean specific to Whiskey Row, like even the city's display downtown. And maybe I'm I'm misunderstanding the issue.
Sure.
But I know that we reported on it and that there was, I think even they kind of curtailed or cut back some of the lighting because of the concerns specifically of the nature of some of the Whiskey Row buildings.
I know that there has been a movement downtown to try to make sure that we use the proper plug-ins and we have rated current up-to-date wiring so we can use that. And that was taken on a few years ago. I think that's probably what you're referring to. But a lot of times people want more, so they go in and they get that lighting and they do a couple extra plug-ins to add to their business, because we are the Christmas city, right? So everybody wants to come there and see, and they want it as nice and as beautiful as they can.
Right, and
that's always a concern.
It becomes that thing of protecting that golden goose.
Yeah,
it's arguable, as you stated earlier in the show, that without Whiskey Row and that historic flavor, it just wouldn't be the same. For everybody would feel that. We need to take another short break, so we'll do that. Our guest today, Fire Marshal Eric Kriwer from the Prescott Fire Department, talking about the Whiskey Row fire. We'll be back right after this.
Here in northern Arizona and throughout Yavapai County, people count on Orkin Pest Control. With over 100 years of combined experience, nobody knows how to protect your home or your business from harmful or annoying pests like the Orkin Man. To start service, contact your Northern Arizona Orkin Pest Control. In the Verde Valley, call 567-5100 or Orkin Pest Control in the Prescott area at 775-8772.
kids about the dangers of prescription drug abuse. The partnership at drugfree.org.
Hi, I'm Steve Scourgy with Yavapai Silent Witness. Marshal Gonzalez was murdered on this spot almost 15 years ago, back in March of 1997. We know that there is somebody out there who knows what happened in the alley that night. Yavapai Silent Witness is offering an $11,000 cash reward for information that leads to the arrest of Marshal's killer. For Yavapai Silent Witness, I'm Steve Scourgy.
Every year, 2 million kids play doctor by taking pills not prescribed to them. Talk to your kids about the dangers of prescription drug abuse. The partnership at drugfree.org.
Welcome back to the program. Again, our guest today, Eric Kriwer, Fire Marshal, City of Prescott Fire Department, the Whiskey Row Fire. In our final minutes here, Eric, have you? We kind of talked about the departments, looked at some things, and even some city officials. You've kind of thought, well, there's some things we can do here. Yeah. How about some of the tenants and the building? Perhaps even more importantly, the building owners. Has anyone kind of contacted you and said, you know, maybe you ought to come over and do an inspection, or I've got something I'm concerned about? Have you had any of that feedback yet?
We haven't had a whole lot of feedback regarding that from the direct building owners, as far as me personally. But I know the building official and I have really talked, and when we were there on site during the investigation and making sure all the utilities, because there's a lot of utilities that used to run throughout those businesses, they're very appreciative, and I think the best time is now to make sure that people understand that this can happen. There's a lot of indifference, even 9/11. Look at the indifference now that people kind of get away. Time pushes, and now with all the communications we have and all that interaction, it compresses that time where we really have an opportunity to take advantage of that. Right. So we're going to, I welcome the business community, and they can contact us at the Prescott Fire Department. We will get into their businesses eventually when we can schedule it and have time. But if they really want to make sure that we come in currently and be proactive, they can contact us, and I can give you that number if you'd like.
Please do.
They can call us. Yeah, they can call us at 928-777-1760, and that's the Fire Prevention Office with Prescott Fire Department. And if they want to take a proactive approach, or if they have any concerns, a customer does, we get a lot of concerns from people that go into businesses and they have issues. Sometimes they're complaint driven by an employee that has issues with their business and stuff. So we try to mitigate through that, but we'll go in at any time, let people know their life safety issues that they need to handle right away, things that we can identify. And then there are some things that they can take time on. They can, you know, sometimes things need to be budgeted, they're costly, and we don't mind working with them in that way.
I can understand a business owner or you know, a landlord saying, oh, if Kriwer comes in here, I'm gonna have to owe money to somebody, and and I understand that. You know, if you're driving an 8-year-old car down the road, arguably it's going to be maybe a tiny bit less safe than a brand new one. Sure. And we play that. That's our system. That's how those things work. But it sounds like what you're saying, people really don't be afraid of things. You'll work with people, the business owners and whatnot, to do the best you can.
Yeah, I've worked hard to make sure that we have a common sense approach in the city of Prescott. And I think most of the business owners that have dealt with me directly and the citizens feel that way with our division and our department. We're not here to strong arm people, but we're here to make sure it's safe for them, their employees, and their customers. Because truly, downtown, the survival of downtown is the survival of our city. Yeah. And that's a huge, that we want people to come to Prescott, enjoy it for all of its flavor, its historic value, and to feel safe when they come there, and they should.
And this fire,
it's a safe city.
This fire underlines that things can go wrong even with the best planning. Eric, we thank you for coming in. Want to remind our radio listeners and the folks watching on Channel 2, news@myradioplace.com. That is how you can send an email to Paul and I. The producers of the program will take a look. Perhaps you have a guest idea. You're welcome to send that to us. We appreciate it. It's Eric Kriwer, our guest today, Prescott Fire Marshal. I'm Brad Miller. We'll see you on Countywide next time. Thanks.
This has been Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Listen in each Tuesday and Thursday as we tackle the hot topics and talk to the decision makers across Yavapai County. That's Countywide with Brad Miller and Paul David each Tuesday and Thursday on this Yavapai Broadcasting station.